Hello and welcome to Clawful Evil Probable Claws, a show where we discuss Wildbow's most carful work. I'm your very villainous hostess, Vice Versailles.
And I'm your conniving hostess, Kippos. In this debriefing, we're covering Chapter 3 of Arc 5, The Quick.
Carson!
Carson! Woo!
I love this guy. He's so crazy.
Yeah, I was assuming that this would be a Carson chapter, and I'm so happy that it is. He's such a blast. He's so interesting. He's so fascinating to read. I just really love reading his perspective.
Just as a quick reality check, what does he do over the course of this chapter? I'm pretty sure he kills a guy, but he also gives someone a tourniquet.
No, he doesn't kill him. He beats him over the face with his gun, and watches him crawl away, but he doesn't kill him.
And
I
just
think
sort of holds
Mia
him.
might have killed two people.
Just kind of holds him so that he watches as his beautiful demon wife that he loves very much kills two people by smashing their faces together. And that's on the street.
That's with people watching. Yeah.
They start heckling the bystanders afterwards.
Yeah, it's something else. I mean, I don't know if it was just me, but when he was describing how Mia was grabbing that dude, I did that to myself to try and figure it out. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, no, I get that. I can understand what she's doing now. And yeah, I mean, it's a it's a Carson chapter, but Mia's the star, which I think works for Carson's vibe. He loves his wife. He's a wife guy. It makes sense that his wife is the star in his chapters. I mean, what a brilliant chapter, though. Really, everything is falling apart. And yeah, everything's falling apart. It's all going terribly. And Carson is here to be yeah, and that's okay-ish.
Completely ordinary. It happens.
Yeah, it happens every couple of years, apparently, which is...
It happened while he was in school.
Yep, happened, just as bad as this, or worse, he says, when he was in school, and it's oh my gosh, the Clawniverse really is not going good. I mean, we knew that, but
it's been at it for a while.
Yeah, and these local, just complete breakdowns of any social order. Something that I kept on thinking, but not writing down when I was doing my notes and when I was doing my live reads, is that it feels like quote unquote anarchy, but this is not anarchy. It's not the political position of anarchy, because anarchy is a very well defined political movement, and it's nothing like this. But this is what a 2000s movie would depict anarchy, would depict the post-apocalypse as. This is
your purge.
Yeah.
I particularly want to investigate something particular here where Carson is talking to Valentina about the lessons that he wants her to pick up on in the previous chapter.
Uh-huh.
And we get into his mind, and we can see that he has had actually a substantial amount of time to adapt to this world. That these big collapses, are happening right now, are normal for him. And they've been happening since he was in school. And maybe part of the reason that he was set back a grade or didn't end up getting a proper education is that there wasn't really one to get.
Yeah.
And in contrast, there are the people that are hiding in their homes, putting spotlights on things, watching but not interacting. And there was this big notion that he touched on for Valentina of trying to prepare the kids for the future. The idea that this is going to be a different sort of life they're going to lead. This is going to be a very different world they're going to grow up into. They need different skills. And in a real way, Carson is a first prototype for that. His mindset, the way he approaches things, where you can freely bluff, you can freely commit crimes, you can freely attack people. It's just a matter of doing it in a balanced way that gets you sort of moving on and lets you continue driving. It's charming in how monstrous it is. And it's the main thing that I am trying to get at here is that the likes of Ben and the people that are spectating, every time this happens, a few more of them venture out into this purge-ish world. You have now people that were ready to do ambushes and robberies the moment that the power went out.
Yeah, yeah. Crazy.
and who apparently will never be caught and never held to justice and are just going to retreat afterwards. They're just going to go back to their normal lives. And there's a lot of, certainly with Ben, it's sort of like this first realization, and us as readers, we're being introduced to this world. It's also a first realization. But Carson is not only already adapted, but he's readily passing on these lessons to the next generation, and there's no confusion for him in what is happening. It is with certainty that he goes, that's an ambush. I shouldn't help that person that's bleeding out on the street because that's definitely an ambush. And I was right, so I don't need to question that.
Yeah, like, and he notes, like, when he's like thinking, oh, this is like almost certainly an ambush, is like she's not faking it. You know, it's not that she is part of the ambush in the sense that like she's working with them. No, she's bait that they like stabbed and put there, and she's going to bleed out. But it's an ambush. Yeah. Shall we get into the chapter summary?
Gladly. In 5.3, Carson laments Camrose's apocalyptic traffic, putting a spotlight on how people just can't relax. He and Mia commiserate about what went wrong and what they can do in the future, teaching Valentina that the past has 100% chance of happening, as consecutive ambushes neatly demonstrate. Carson uses his $1 million mug to bluff some muggers, and Mia puts their heads together for a diabolical solution. He reflects on their connection, like that one time Mia told him her mother was dead in flagrante delicto. Deducing where Ryder and Benito are lurking, they insist on a team-up. Or else.
I mean, yeah, excellent chapter. Yeah, let's look at our last week's BS predictions. So last week you said...
I really thought that Sterling and Tyr would be at the same daycare.
Crazy idea. Who would think that?
A lot of us.
It made sense.
It does make sense. And the fact that it's an old associate doesn't necessarily rule it out. Though I can see a world where, like, seeing this speculation in the community, the moment we're in Carson's perspective, this is a sort of soft no coming from
think that's what
the
it
narrative.
Is, yeah. I think this is Wildbow being like, no. They have people for this, like,
which is neat because they have people for this.
Yeah, they do.
Like these two were ready.
Yeah.
And in contrast to Ben, who the moment that he realizes he's the sole custodian of the kid that he has kind of been raising for the last few years, is the moment he realizes that he's not in a position to look after them.
Yeah. So my prediction from last week is that Addie and the girls got turned into secret sleeper agents via indoctrination, and they're going to break Rip out together. And I just want to say that that's not deconfirmed. So
it could still happen.
I think it's still going to happen. Yeah.
I think as far as initial expectations went, I really thought that the end of this chapter would be the beginning.
Oh, like they'd start with the team up.
Yeah, that like we were going to see Carson right away in the scenario of trying to find Ben and Ryder. And I'm really glad that we got something else. This chapter kind of works as like the other butterfly wing to Valentina's chapter. Like the patterns on them are reflected. And we get to see, like, just as the kid was looking at the parent, now the parent is looking out at the kid and out at the world. And I'm really glad we have it. There's this moment that really, really strikes me, because I think over the course of us talking about the story as it's unfolded, we sometimes forget that everything is on fire. There's so much smoke, everything is burning, and so, like, it's getting inescapable, and the symbolism there very obvious. I mean, where there's smoke, there's fire. Like having difficulty seeing because there's so many disasters around. Having like a uncontrolled bodily reaction that you can't hide and can't control. But in this chapter, there's the break against the window shield, and then Carson just readily smashes the screen so that he can see more clearly. And that causes his eyes to water. from the smoke getting into the car.
Yeah, they're stepping out into, well, I mean, not like stepping out, but like they are removing the barriers between them and the consequences of the world at the moment, between them and the protests.
They're right in it. And within that, I feel like that is very much their parenting style. When things that like protect you, the system, rules, laws break down, just absolutely shred them. If you give, Carson will ignore every expectation, every rule, every truth, if it has stopped benefiting him.
Yeah.
And that has its own consequences. You don't get to break down the windows of society without getting smoke in your eyes. I think for Carson, who sort of, in his mind, there's not a lot of virtue. There's a lot of practicality. A lot of like this like loyalty rather than like principle. And as a result, the question of like, what is the value of the rule of law? What is the value of society's expectations? What is the value of truth? All of these things are practical questions. So the only way that he perceives like the shelter, like being inside the car, like in the same way that everyone else is staying inside their houses or behind closed doors, the only practicality is whether it lets him get a clear look from a safe place. And if it's not providing a clear look, then he's not safe anyway, so he doesn't care.
Yeah. I like that analysis.
Big fan.
Yeah. Any reveals or questions?
Reveals that we got. Well, I posed this to you. Why are we now being told that Mia's mom is dead?
Yeah, I'm not sure why now. Because like it does give some context, and it tells us why like Benito couldn't get in contact with her. Yeah, I'm not sure why now. Why not during Mia's, why not during, a Mia chapter, whether in her arc or maybe next chapter. Yeah, I'm not entirely certain why now and why not then.
I think it's, at the time I called this shot, and I'm very proud of this, that Carson was outright lying about the mum thing.
Yes, you did.
That like when they were needing to get out of the city, like that was the excuse he went for.
No, I don't think that was the excuse. I think that was like one of the things that they told Josie that might be like a sudden they need to leave is because like Mia's mum. So I think that's not the excuses they went with, but it's like one of the ones that she was ready for. And you said that sounds like bullshit, and I said no, that could be realistic, and you were correct, and I was wrong.
Well, it might not have always been bullshit, because Josie might have been working for them for quite a while.
Yeah, but then, presumably, I mean, if they wanted to tell her, they could have. Also, it seemed like Mia was not interested at all in going and, like, seeing her mum. So I think it probably was bullshit.
So, bullshit on two counts. Even if it were true, it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
But, we could have, at any point earlier, have, like, even when we had that first flashback to Mia's mom, before Mia kidnapped Ripley, we could have had that whole description in the mood of this woman is now dead. And instead it's Carson that tells us, in a just a brief aside to an intimate moment. We'll call it that.
Yeah, an intimate moment.
I've pulled this quote here because this is a big, this is kind of a big deal, this insight into what's going on in Mia's head and Mia's past. And also a sort of reciprocal to last chapter, how Mia explained herself to the anarchist radio people. That team was like, she went through all the steps of the process for why she thinks it was the right thing to do to steal Ripley. And then we have this flip side of her confiding in Carson, something that she couldn't even say any other time of the day, no matter how much was on or like compartmentalized off of her mind, about her relationship with her mom and how it relates to her disability. Like those early days of the swelling. I think this is the most complete description we've gotten as far as
I think
what
so,
Mia's
yeah.
symptoms were.
Yeah, and it's something that I think we brought up in the podcast a couple of weeks ago, that like it would have been nice to like see more of Mia during that period of time, like in Mia's arc. But I think we were kind of, I mean, I remember being very much like, it's fine that we didn't, because, you know, we're setting up a lot for the work itself and there's a lot to dive into. So I am really, really happy that we get this look back at who Mia was in those like weeks and months following her accident. Yeah.
I remember still being in the hospital and looking at my mom and saying, ugly, 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 over and over again, staring her down.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you can see how, like, someone has this child that they, you know, love, that's like very upbeat, and like very, you know, happy or whatever. Suddenly swapping from that to like crying and screaming at people, and then like when, you know, you've got them like in the hospital and it seems like things are starting to calm down, they just sit there for like an hour or two just telling you that you're ugly over and over without stopping. Like, I think anyone would break down crying and leave. Like, it doesn't excuse how Mia's mum behaves towards her, but it makes sense.
Well, that's the thing. What I think happens with Mia's mom is that her daughter behaves in this way after injury, and then I think in a pithy vengeance way, she returns fire, and that's in the same sort of repetitive, no movement, nothing held back honesty. Because like Mia describes it as like she kept like accusing me of being a serial killer, like connecting those dots out loud and forming me that like it doesn't matter that it was fear, it doesn't matter that there was the outstanding circumstances of your injury. What matters is that serial killers are the type of people that would attack an animal.
Yeah.
And like imposing that identity on, so that the last time they ever speak is with this quote that for her mom saying, "You scare the shit out of me." The applause continued, the host talking over the noise. A product white and glossy rotated on the screen. Her mom's eyes bored holes in her, heavy bags beneath them. So that's the staring her down. That's the same like unresponsive like expression of something primal at its absolute 10, except what her mom is giving her is, "I'm afraid of you," whereas what like Mia was going through is a very similar fear that gets expressed in frustration and rage. Like the lashing out, the fight response to all that cortisol. And like they're really not very different. The difference is that Mia's mom was the adult in the situation. And by being fair in a way, by doing unto others as others unto you, to a child, none of this healing really, like none of this healed properly. She's still in tears about it years later, and in a big way, I feel like the reason that this comes up during an intimate scenario is because there's so much force and guard in Mia's personality. So this is like one of the very few times ever that she is going to even like allow herself to feel something.
Yeah, and it's like the fact that her mum just died, and like the only Like, the main thrust of what she wants to talk about there is, like, she thought I was a serial killer. Like, she called me a serial killer all the time. Like, that is, like, the defining part of their relationship to her, is how much her mum not just was scared of her, but, like, was convinced that she was evil, that she was a demon, you know?
And what do you know?
Yeah, it's fucking horrifying. Yeah, and then, like...
She's reclaiming the label.
But I mean, like, you know, there's this... That's it, like, her mum was, like, abusive. Like, her mum abused her. Like, that's abusive, straight up. Like, it's hard to describe what having a label like that put on you consistently does to your psyche. From, you know, some personal experience. But it's nothing good. Yeah, like, it's, you know, like, sometimes people will just go out and try and prove that you are fundamentally evil. And, like, you have to try and figure out a way to deal with that. And you have to try not to internalize it, but that's really, really difficult. Yeah. And even more so from a parent, and even more so basically from, you know, because she talks about, like, herself being born as, like, when, you know, as this head injury is, like, when Mia was born. So, like, for her entire life, you know, as herself, having this told to her over and over again by her mum is, like, I'm not surprised that her moral compass has ended up where it is.
It's a wee bit skewed.
It's a wee bit skewed.
Or, you know,
But,
I think maybe what she's trying to get at with emphasizing that she still has the memories is that she does actually know where the compass ought to lead.
Yeah.
There's a sensation of guilt or shame. I think more so shame, because it's to do with who she is fundamentally rather than her actions. There is a dissonance in what the compass says, like what she thinks a good person does, and what she thinks she is. She's been told that she's a serial killer. She's been told that she's a demon. And then, like, living in this very dark place and acting within that label, this is the you know, 1.2 earliest impressions we get of Mia. She murders someone. So is she a serial killer? Yeah. I would say so. Maybe not in the sense of the sort of patterned, methodical, like, has a profile serial killer.
But she's killed plenty of people.
But she's killed a lot of people.
Yeah.
And if I think a significant component of that is that if you have been informed and identify with the label that you are a monster, or that you are a demon, or that you are a serial killer, then anytime it happens, there's no, like, it's not a I shouldn't have done that. It's a that was correct. Like, see, it's more evidence to the truth. I was told this was something I would do, and I've done it now. I feel terrible, but at least it's true. And that it's and to see it from Carson's perspective, he uses the word study. He communicates, oh, continue. Like I didn't have an intention of, like, I was trying to make a joke. Like I just am looking for what to say. He's living in his words. There's not really, like, he's like present in his body. He's thinking about, like, being like the sweat and the stress in his arms from trying to hold the pose. And we there's a lot of his coldness there, where there's not really a, like, there's no burst of empathy. There's no like sympathetic like impulse. He just says, I'm sorry. He knows the dialogue. And within that, we finally get to the impression of the demon in like glimpsed in like the smallest amount of light, a creature in shadow, and then a hard cut back to my wife, my love,
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
like Gomez
As she's
looking
beating
at
these two people to death.
yeah, it's Gomez watching Morticia. This is the person that Mia is ashamed of being, the demon, the person that she was told that she was over and over again, that the label that got in the way of the sort of care and healing that might have taken her back onto the moral compass, back off of this criminal path, the sort of the rapport that could have led her to not steal a baby and then commit hard to this path. That demon is someone is the aspect of her that Carson truly loves. And that's who he's loyal to. The no holds barred, the no true rules beast, the below the skin. And
I think that part makes a lot of sense to him. And I'm not sure how much the other parts of Mia make sense to him.
He doesn't seem to need them to, because he just I mean, again, the earliest understanding of Carson, he hears that his wife is stealing another kid, and he goes, "Yep, we're staying in cameras." Sure, he's ride or die, and his central need, when they first had sex, was to understand what the hell was going on with her, and he's begun to, and he has identified from that stranger in like the mosque on the night that he killed Tyr's parents. He identified the demon that is ashamed of itself, and he's fallen in love. And it's so sweet. It's so sweet. I need to find more romance novels to read.
Clearly, I think yes. I mean, it is sweet. They are. I think we've kind of been saying it from pretty early on in the book, but Mia and Carson are so fucked up. They're so perfect for each other. Like, yeah, just the way that these two somewhat monstrous people match is just, it's chef's kiss. Like, yeah, I love them both.
It's we when we really rip into Ben because he's so normal, the reciprocal to that is delighting over these two because they're completely crazy. They're wild.
I mean, yeah,
they're unhinged, and
Mia grabbed someone by the head and tried to beat him and another person to death using that
with the skulls.
Yeah, it's fucked up. It's horrible. But also, my God, that's... Oh, hi, Mia. I mean, sorry. Hi. Twirling my hair. How are you?
Oh, not another what the fuckle.
Yes, it's me. Me and the what the fuckle.
Okay, what's that ship called? Kipperkaramia? Kipperkaramia.
Kipperkaramia. Yeah, I like it.
Well, yeah, look, congratulations.
I think something that Wildbow really does well is like bad people doing things competently. And that's what that's what Carson's perspective is a lot of the time, and that's what Mia's perspective was, and that wasn't really Valentina's or Ben's perspective, and that's fine. They had their own. They did not fit into the archetype of bad people doing things competently. But I really like bad people doing things competently fiction. It's a lot of fun. So whenever I'm back in the head of someone that's evil and doing things very well, I'm happy.
At some point, we will be able to talk about Worm. It's not in this episode, but when we do, specifically in regards to that, I have even more to say. Now that we have like the heart and trauma of most of this cast, I I want to segue to Carson with specifically getting around in this wake of the blackout, the anxiety of the carjacking.
Yeah, and like the way that as soon as they're like in this place where the car has to be moving slowly, like immediately people like rush out towards them. Like it's not like the thing with Mia, for example, is that she is driven a lot by her fear, by her anxiety. And that's fine, but a lot of the things that she's very anxious about aren't real in a way. Like she is like contingency on contingency on contingency and like being afraid of everything that moves. And a lot of the things that she is afraid of have not come to pass. But like Carson is anxious about this carjacking, and like he is so right to be, like this is not like a vague anxiety, a vague worry. It's like as soon as the car is in a vulnerable position, they get attacked. And like someone like drops a fucking like air conditioning unit onto their car to try and stop them, I guess. Like that's terrifying, and he's worried about like the black bag, like the trash bag on the not on the floor, on the ground, like maybe having like, boards with nails through it. And it's like, you know what? I trust your fears here, Carson. I'm pretty sure it does.
He seems to be speaking from experience.
Yeah, he really does. And it's like, and obviously then later we get into the ambush, which is another like attempted carjacking. And it's like, again, like his fears are right. Like he understands the world when it's like this. He knows what like the most desperate people will do in these situations. Yeah, and it's nothing good.
Nothing good whatsoever.
Yeah.
Within that, there's this emphasis that Mia provides that she is ruled by anxiety, not fear. And where Carson insists that he kind of isn't ruled by any emotion whatsoever, that he's very material and very practical. That he thinks he can just take all of his emotions and put them in a box, even though he murdered Tyr's parents in a rage.
Yeah, I think, I love the way that Valentina phrased it, of like, he's ruled by love, or like his expression of love. Yeah.
I'm just coming back to that moment when he, without hesitation, breaks down the glass. It's like, oh yeah, that might as well happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nigh unbothered. But Valentina has every reason to be confused with the certainty with which these two are navigating this situation. Mia just, after times like this, it ends. But things will be worse for a while after. It's like that's all.
Yeah. And then, then she talks about, why she wants the money, why making the kids prepared, and praying that, like, what she's taught Ripley helps her make it through. And it's like, just like the way that, like, the Clorniverse, sorry. Every time I say Clorniverse, I laugh because it's such a stupid name, but I love it as well.
Have we considered Water World style, like Claw World? Claw?
No, that sounds less. Clawed sounds actually just as stupid, which I like.
Welcome to the Claw World.
Yeah, but welcome to the Clorniverse.
It's not better.
I don't know. Yeah, they're just as bad as each other, and so I love them both. But yeah, like the way that, like, locally, to each area in the Clorniverse, it seems like the world is just going through these oscillatory periods of like super high violence, and then like slowly working its way back to an almost normal before like, crashing again. And it's, I mean, we talked last week a little bit about how like about how Carson was saying that like most people aren't teaching their kids like what they need to know for the realities of the world. And I think this is kind of indicative of like what those realities of the world are. the carjacking and stuff is like horrible, but like Carson is prepared for it, and so he can somewhat get away from the carjackings. And like, you kind of have to be prepared for it in a world where, if you are driving in a situation like this and you have to go slowly at any point, people will try and steal your car and maybe stab you in the thigh and leave you to bleed out. Like, yeah, it's a scary fucking world. Yeah, I just thought, it was really interesting seeing that.
That these might be the reasonable people.
Yeah, not like super reasonable, but like the way, like, because we've talked about like the fact that like being in these crime groups is putting like Ripley and Tia and now Valentina in danger. But at the same time, like, it's a dangerous fucking world. Like, leaving the city when there's riots going on theoretically puts you in, just as much danger as being part of like this, being like background to a criminal gang. Yeah.
What I would really love to see is maybe we'll get this if we ever get Ryder's perspective. Someone that's like a very high initiative in trying to hold to ideals of and like very, like, if there's a criticism to say of Ben, it's that his awareness of the practicalities of the virtues he upholds is very minimal. He doesn't self-reflect. He doesn't really he doesn't uphold them in the face of scrutiny. He thinks he's the objective lens, but he really isn't, and he's not really trying to be, or no, certainly not very effective in his trying. Then, if we had Ryder's perspective, who is constantly like having to compromise in his pursuit of trying to do some small good, and to the degree that he has compromised. Has compromised, like he feels like emotionally compromised. He's been traumatized by that experience. If we get Ryder's perspective and we see someone that's trying, like where Mia and Carson have effectively given up on these like nicer virtues, the where the moral compass guides, they're not trying to follow that path of most resistance. They are very practical. They're trying to keep what they have close to them alive and well. If someone were in the position of trying really hard to do good, how much would they fail? And I think that's maybe why we have Ben instead of that hypothetical like high virtue person. Because I think if an average person tried that, they would end up where Ben is, where with a lot of hypocrisies, a lot of misshapen approaches, and ultimately a good degree of self-sabotage. I think it is that we have this Carson quote here of those oscillations having changed how he saw the world. He thought back to it a lot, that so many people could wear that mask, that these people that have just become temporary criminals and will merge perfectly back into normal society when and if it recovers without any justice dealt to them. He's just become that.
I liked that because it so very clearly fits in with his world view, like, and how he deals with stuff, because he's, he is at the same time the concerned parent and like the dude that does odd jobs, and also the person that doesn't mind like setting a grenade trap for people that are trying to follow him, for example, as we saw in his chapters. Like he's become one of those people that will, in times of high stress, like break all of the rules, and then in times of low stress, go back to normal, Yeah.
And he has fully embraced that. And then Valentina walks in like a conscience for the first time.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's the thing. Like, because she says like we should, like talking about like rescuing the woman that's bleeding out. It's like Highland said, you need to be that person for you're taking Ripley to even have a chance of being okay. Or what you said, Carson, about about needing to be able to justify it all to her. And it's like, thank God for Highland. Like, thank God that one of these three actually fucking listened to him and somewhat internalized what he said, because she's right. Because they're working from such a flawed point of view, and they're working from such a shaky start. It's good for them to try and be better, to try and actually be the positive change that is needed in the world of the Cloniverse.
Maybe we should say Clomerica.
Generally have avoided. No, because Clomerica sounds decent, and I want it to sound stupid because it makes me laugh.
Okay, in that case, I'll call it the Clorld.
Yeah, the Clorld.
The Clorld.
But yeah, like the way that Highland has actually gotten through to Valentina here is great, because like last week it did not feel like Highland got through to her. It felt like she was just kind of blanking on what he said and was thinking, actually, no, you know what? It would be okay if they like captured him and tortured him and like locked him up, which is fucking horrible. But having like that last like impassioned fucking plea that he gave actually get through to her is something I really like. And I hope that it means good things for her mental health and like her the way that she's turning out, but who fucking knows.
I got my conscience from Uncle Highland.
Yay. Well, it's better than getting it from Mum Mia or Dad Carson. Or Dad Davy, to be fair.
Or Father Davy.
Yeah, or Father Davy. I think that's more correct. Yeah.
That's she the man I consider my father, like very, very legal, and
very formal.
in distance. The conscience coming from the kids. There's that quote. The child believes that the world should be fair and nice, and that it is wrong, that it is hostile and mean, and the child is right, and that is the wisdom of a child. Valentina is holding these two who have had their consciences, if they had them at all, or if they were in any condition to build one, just thoroughly debunked by the world that they've lived in. And the people outside, the spectators, are in the same condition. They all they can do is watch, and put the spotlight on, and like emphasize that this woman is in need of help, and they won't intervene. They certainly won't intervene in the ambush. And the kids are all right. The kids are saying, please help. It's what you need to do for integrity's sake. I don't know if the story ends with Valentina having pushed them all the way back onto the moral compass. I don't know if that's possible, because it tends to point in lots of directions. But
yeah, I don't know if Valentina's on the correct moral compass. I think I would love if Ripley could push Valentina onto the correct moral compass, and then the two of them could push together. Yeah,
and course correct. Find a rhythm.
Yeah.
Go siblings.
Yeah.
But I don't like their odds at this rate.
No, me either.
I mean, they have no friends. They were short on friends in general. Poor Hearsts.
Yeah.
But over the course of this fight, Carson rips his side open and didn't care that much if he died.
Not if Mia could get out. Mia could get out, and if he could get them closer to saving Ripley. And it's like, he's so passively ready to die. And it's like, fucking hell. Not good, like being in that state where you don't care if you live or die. It's not fun. It's not a good place to be in. Yeah, I don't know. It's rough. Yeah, poor Carson.
Poor Carson.
I do like that later on Mia like chastises him for it and, you know, says like, you know, Ripley needs you, like, you know, our family needs you.
Aww.
Yeah, which is sweet. And
This is
then
very
there's
sweet.
this moment of Mia grabbed the other distracted gunman and lifted him off of his feet. Ugh, hot. Not by much, but enough that she could thrust him backwards, almost stumbling, almost thrown over the hood of a nearby car. Like she basically threw him over a car. So I think Mia is not beating those Amazon allegations.
Okay, I think I've begun to understand the difference between your perspective on Mia and my perspective on Mia. For you, Mia is attractive, and for me, Mia is transition goals.
Right. Yes, that's fair.
I want to be able to throw someone like that. Specifically,
That's
I'd like
fair.
to throw
I
them on the
don't.
dance floor, and for them to be okay, and for it to be fun,
Yeah,
and
well,
a
that's
collaborative
fair.
endeavor. But
That's fair.
in the meantime, I will settle for reading about someone being thrown onto a car.
Yeah. I do not want to be like that, but I want to meet someone like that and date them.
So
there's a
if
Yeah.
you know, I think if you ever end up in America, you just need to get involved in the kidnapping rings, and the mistaken identity, Fantastic Mr. Ripley, like, and if you just get into crime, maybe she's out there. Maybe the woman for you is out there.
Maybe the Mia of my dreams is out there. But anyway, yeah, so there's a moment where, you know, her hand grabbed the other man's lower face, fingers going into his mouth, fingertips in the floor of his mouth and gums, thumb digging into the soft underside of his jaw. She lifted his head up and then punched down with it still in her grip, the back of his head catching the side of the woman's. And then, like she then has, like, teeth embedded in her fucking hand from that. Like, she broke, like, some of his teeth off. And like it's that clenched fist that Valentina has always talked about with Mia. Like it's the clenched fist getting released, and she just goes off like sicko mode. Yeah, literally beats two people to death using one of them as a weapon. As I kind of assume that these people have died. I think if they haven't died, they're not doing very well, and they maybe possibly wish that they had. I
mentioned earlier that, like, as far as like Valentina's framework of Carson lives in the moment, and when he recalls things, he relives that moment. He's material. He's very about the tangible actions of what someone said and how they were moving and what they looked like, and from those details and observations, modeling feeling. Like what directions does he take the dialogue? What does he do in response? Again, that physicality, that material world. So in my mind, when we're in Carson's perspective and he describes something very visceral happening, done by his wife, I think it's because he finds it hot. So I think
you and me both, Carson. You and me both.
I think the subtext of this really visceral description is, God, I wish that were me.
Yeah, you and me both, Carson. I'm with him there. Yeah, fair enough. Honestly, that's valid as hell. Anyway.
Okay, so we're just gonna put the horniness for Mia aside, or perhaps
moving right along.
Click into gear. We have discussed the place that his mind immediately goes afterward, which is that one time, like a relatively recent time that they were having sex, which I think is further evidence for him finding this whole scenario actually very attractive.
God.
But you know, within him not doing very well, like he's not suicidal, but he's ready to die, and that's not enough self-preservation to actually preserve yourself. And, you know, Mia is going at 110%. She's ripping up her body. So, like, this is a bad scenario for both of them in practical terms. And so the place his brain goes isn't, like, just, oh, I find this woman attractive. It's a melancholic like reliving of something like within that lust for like much deeper pain, and the ways that those like central historical agonies relate to this very painful time that they're living through. And honestly, it's kind of sweet. It's kind of cute. I think it's really it's nice that as Carson is watching this and seeing his wife do what he finds very attractive in her, he does tell her to stop, and they move on. And at his daughter's advice, he does give the woman a tourniquet, and Mia sorts out someone getting her help.
Yeah.
Like coming from that physical place, coming from that like carnal attraction, to then like moving out of it into melancholy and sympathy, and also something that is, I would say, virtuous, but only in the sense that like he's like heeding the call of virtue, of like actually getting onto the moral compass, doing the right thing because because it is required, because it is necessary, not because it is rewarding or because it is safe. Is there's something really crucial that happened in the alchemy of this, and I'm just watching this little golden nugget of how these two damaged demons ended up doing good in the world and saving someone's life after so many murders to get to that point.
So many. Oh my god. Yeah. Yeah, and I think part of that comes down to Valentina, and I think a lot of that comes down to Highland. Because I think maybe if Highland hadn't talked to them last chapter about what they've been doing, I don't know if they would have stopped. Yeah.
I mean, why stop if it's going so well, right? Now it's not going so well, so...
Yeah. This is this moment where, you know, they mention, like everyone else is gone, like the kids remained. And like obviously the kids is the name of like this gang, but it's like it really is feeling like realistically what they have are themselves and their children. And that's it. And, you know, their only allies are these, inexperienced children. And it's like, oof. I mean, not that the gang or the group of the quote unquote, the kids are children. They're like in their 20s, but compared to like, they're not, they're not Highland, they're not Bolden. They're not one of these other gangs with like long histories. Like they're just the kids. Yeah. They're in a bad spot.
And symbolically, the kids remained even after all the adults are done fighting and having their squabbles. That there's going to be the next generation.
Yeah,
anonymous for now. I'll just under a first label, but they'll outgrow it.
We'll see. Hopefully. There's this moment in the car where Valentina's like half hugging Carson from behind, and she says, I'm just checking to make sure you're not dying, basically. And he notes like she was tired too and scared. And I think like tired and scared at the moment fucking perfectly sums up all three of them. Like, like they're like terrified of losing Ripley. And they're exhausted because they've been fucking going to 11 like the entire time. Yeah. And then there's this moment when they're going past the civil warriors, where there's this dad out there marching with his like 6 or 7 year old daughter sitting on his shoulders, and as she roared, the crowd roared with her, which she responded to with her best roars. I do think it's really interesting because we saw in Ben's chapter, this arc, that there was a dad with his I think it was his daughter, but a dad with his kid, like up on his shoulders within the pro-democracy, like within the left-wing protesters. And I really find it interesting, like kind of contrasting how the two of them are, because with the other, like with the left wing like group, the kid is just kind of there, not really interacting much, but there with her dad. Whereas here, like they're using her, like they're using this daughter, like this child, as an icon of like not worship, but like
They're rallying
worship,
around
like,
her.
Yeah, like she is, yeah, like an object that they're using to rally around. Yeah, which I think is really interesting. Yeah. Cool.
There's
Okay, that's our beat by beat.
That's our beat by beat. There's something to say in the themes of like between we're getting this focus of the kids that have to be around this chaos and them trying to come to terms with it and trying to understand it. And I think the central emphasis within that is on learning, in regards to how nature is nurtured. What would make someone quick, as it were? Like how do you get up to speed with things? How do you become clever in that quick sense? Like get on top of things. And a lot of the action that happens in this chapter is about like quick thinking. It requires improvising. It requires reacting to like, oh, there's a something that's fallen onto the windshield. We crack down the windshield. Oh, we're being made to slow down. We're going to have to swerve so we don't get our tires blown out. We have to make a snap decision because this woman is bleeding out. And every decision is being cultivated by lessons learned. And so where the kids are really matters, because it's like, where are you going to learn these lessons? Where are you going to get these impressions? Valentina, very passive in this chapter. She's in the passenger seat, observing and articulating like little like criticisms and trying to absorb information, asking questions, but she doesn't get out of the car. She doesn't get her hands into things, which is the position that any child would be into. It's just that she has the misfortune of being a teenager on the cusp of needing to step out of the car, as it were. And the further misfortune of having fresh parents that are teaching new lessons, and the further misfortune of having an old parent that is trying to enforce old lessons, and like all of these different lines of information and ways of reacting to things are in contest. So the fact that in one scenario Ben leaves Sterling behind, in another scenario, the dad at the colorful protest with the spray paints that were everything but pure white, writing the boo-hoos. That left wing protest has the dad with his son on his shoulders, just observing. And then we have a one step further from the Civil Warriors, of not just letting the kid observe, but making them the center, making them like part of the mechanism. Each of these are fucked up in different ways, and none of them are the right answer. Sterling is harmed because he feels abandoned. The son is in genuine danger as the protests clash. This daughter is she's right in the thick of it now, so decisions are being made for her before she can think critically. Like she's not just passively learning, but she's participating, which means that these things are being locked in. In the same way that for example, with like the Cavalcantis, there is this degree of really in any a criminal organization where the way that you hold on to someone is you make them complicit. So in order for them to leave, they have to first understand that they are part of the wrongdoing, that they have done wrong, accept that, be able to look out to all of the people that they have rapport with and feel the criticism for them too, and then extricate themselves when they have no network. And like the shape of one is a mire. The shape of the other is an endangerment where you have more autonomy but like more peril. And the last is a giving up, right? Like Sterling is given up on effectively. Ben just leaves him behind. And there, as far as getting things up to stuff quickly, Carson and Mia are committing to the sort of point between the parent on the kid on the shoulders of the parent at the protest and the child made icon in the crowd roaring with her, where Valentina is being brought along to learn the trade effectively, because she's got to learn quickly because the situation is very much not under control.
Yeah.
And the side effect of that is that the lesson doesn't come out quite right because everyone's scared and tired. So Carson, while Valentina needs Carson's support, he very bluntly provides that 100% probability, hard negation. He thinks it's a bit rude. He thinks it's a bit unkind. He would have put it neatly if he could have, but a very impactful aphorism of just there's too much pain, there's too much grit. I don't have enough time to put this kindly or in a way that you can absorb safely. I need you to understand that you don't have time to fret over the probabilities and the possibilities, because we're living in the definite now, and we have to work with the definite now.
Yeah.
And so that's the danger of this middle ground approach, where the lesson gets damaged. Doesn't come out quite right. There's less factors you can control. So it's got the peril and it's got the cementing, like the culpability at the same time. But I think this is the approach that I would prefer, in terms of you can amend, and when things are quieter, you can talk about these sorts of lessons and conclusions if you are a active participant in what they are. But I think that the hardest contrast is Ben's version, where Sterling is left behind. And I think that's how you get people that disagree and talk past each other and never actually figure out what it is they're disagreeing on, because they learn in entirely different places and they have no rapport. This at least builds rapport. And I think that if it's going to go the other way, and Valentina is going to influence her new parents to do more good, like she did here, it's what you need, because there's no way that Sterling can affect Ben to do better at this moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said.
I have so many thoughts about parenting.
Yeah. Okay. Should we talk about Al Bolden's specific predictions for this week?
Do you want to go first?
Sure. I think I've nailed this one. I think it's just going to happen. So Mia is going to prove to like the ghost of her mother, like, the specter of her mother, not the literal ghost, but that she's not a serial killer by not killing a snake that's about to bite Ripley, leaving Ripley to get bitten by the snake and die from being poisoned.
And hey, that's one way to end the cycle of abuse.
Hey, yeah.
The worst solution. Yay!
Yay!
I do take a perhaps unreasonable joy in finding worse solutions, because if you've got an even worse option, you've sort of lifted up your better options. You get the impression that
exactly.
Like, maybe it's not so bad that we're doing it this way, because it could have been worse. But it's that lesser evil thing of you can forget that as you build up those options of like, what else could we have done? Leave Ripley to die? As you build up that pyramid that seems to have height on its own, you still don't quite recognize you're still choosing a lesser evil by the end of it, because it's lifted up so much. It seems so much lesser.
Yeah.
As for me, Carson dies.
Okay. I like it. Do you want to elaborate? Jesus Christ. Would you like to elaborate?
I could elaborate.
Yeah.
I could.
Okay.
I have specific thoughts. I mean, I could go into
you're
it.
welcome to.
Nah,
you don't have to.
Maybe another week. I think it might be an Reflections episode thing. When we do an interrogation, I think for this arc we can maybe think about it. I mean, Carson dies. That's my bold prediction. It's specific because he has to do it.
Yeah.
I know I'm right. So
okay, I like it.
What matters is that it's correct, and this is the coldest read. But evidence from Wildbow's canon, my grasp of the sort of stories he tells, I'm firmly saying it with certainty now. I'm right. Carson dies.
Cool. I'm looking forward to it. So I think we have a mention, not a correction this week, but a mention.
Not a correction. But this is where we reference things that are happening in the community and correct things we got wrong. And there is this lovely comment from Hobo Demon that has stuff to say about horse HRT.
Yay!
He'd like to plug the Four Thieves Vinegar Collective. These folks secure super legal means of serving those underserved by the regular legal medical industries of the world, including EpiPen designs that have a fail-safe in case the auto-inject mechanism fails, and a filtering and separation technique to make the urine of pregnant mares or women more palatable. Additional fun fact, HRT via, and I swear that they wrote this, pregnequestriae, dates back to the classic Greek philosophers. Suck it, Eastern Orthodox Greeks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to wade into a fight between the Greeks, but yeah.
But hey,
pretty cool.
If anyone has a problem with that, they can take it up with Homo Demon on the Reddit. It's on that last episode. You can reply to that.
Fine.
As for our discussion question,
yes. So last week we asked,
what stories guide you through your life and identity?
So, I'm Easily Impressed says that his story, his kids' book of Greek myths, obviously somewhat sanitized because it's for children, but he really enjoyed them and they led to him reading myths from around the world as he grew up. They are the stories of people. They were also a factor that led him into majoring in history, which is pretty cool.
Normal non-Eldritch guy said that they were shaped by Berserk because that brought their their love for long-form storytelling. So that's probably what brought you here. Welcome. They especially like seeing characters reach their goals, deal with the fallout of doing so, and then find new purpose, which helps to deal with the vagaries of life and remind us to take the time to enjoy the quiet moments and the people around us. Alita Battle Angel was also shouted out. So I'm aiming to get all of these stories that are mentioned into the episode description if anyone wants to follow up on them.
Yeah. For what it's worth, we are having to cut down some of these answers. So, in fact, most of these answers we're cutting down a bit. Because there were a lot of answers and there were a lot of long answers, and that's fantastic. And we read them all and enjoyed them all, but we don't want to be here for 30 minutes.
If you'd like to learn more, you can go to the Reddit.
Or the Discord, actually. A lot of people answered in Discord this week.
Which we also appreciate, because it means we can reply to you directly.
Yeah. So 40i2 says stories that particularly resonated with them were the works of Terry Pratchett. They find there is something capital letter true beneath the jokes and the fantasy, and they'll take profound and funny over just profound any day, which I think is great.
Beligtal, Dante, said that he's not in a mind to write a whole explanation for it, but Tolkien's writings were a huge influence on him growing up and are still a big part of his life and identity. In case you couldn't tell by his Smaug avatar and Sindarin username, I reached out to my dear friend who says Dante's username Bregalad was the ant that cared for the Rowans, while Belegtal roughly translates to Bigfoot.
What a pack of nerds. Tesara Watt says they found Pale very helpful for thinking about how they want to develop as a person, but in a way that their parents are the biggest stories. Their entire professional lives were in the voluntary sector. Both were very active in community development, activism, and multiple equality movements. And they did say that their mum passed away when they were quite young. So in a very real sense, it was like their mum's influence on their life was more of a story. And then they say that with their dad being their sole parent, sometimes he makes mistakes, but he's generally really good. But when he does make mistakes, it's really good, even if it's painful, because it's a reminder that people are complicated and shouldn't ever be seen as 100% good or 100% bad.
I really appreciated these autobiographical answers. It was very sweet, and like the emphasis was really like guide you through life and identity. So bringing like bursting the banks from written mediums to the people in your life, I thought is a very, very caring thing to do. I think it's paying respect to good people when that sort of thing happens.
Oh god, is this me again? Wait, we fucked up. Okay, it's fine. I'll read out this one. I got confused for a moment.
Bamboozled by the formatting.
Yeah, bamboozled by the formatting. Hobo Demon says that they grew up in a musical theatre household, and as such, Les Mis and The Man of La Mancha had very big impacts on them. A few of the other ones that they really liked are Ken Follett's Pillars of the Earth series, Akasaka's Oshinoko, analysis on the life and career of Stephen Sondheim, and Tatsuki Fujimoto's Goodbye Eri. In particular, Goodbye Eri is one that they'd like to recommend as an exploration both of the cyclical and iterative processes of generating skills as an artist, and as a particularly haunting in memoriam that it's hard to believe came from the guy whose other famous project is about a guy who can turn into chainsaws. I assume that's about Chainsaw Man, and I have a few of the people I follow on Twitter are really into the current thing of Chainsaw Man, and it seems very intense. And I can see how someone that is drawing and creating a story that it looks like what I have seen from people talking about can also do something very haunting and intense. So, yeah.
I really appreciate the mention of Sondheim and musicals because whereas I am the books sibling, my older sister is the theater sibling. And and each of us have dabbled in the other magic, but my sister is an octuple threat. There is nothing that she cannot do that is involved in the stage. So just sort of feeling the radiant joy that she has for these things, I have a cursory knowledge, and because they mean so much to her, I'm glad that someone shouted them out because they can be really crucial. I mean, Shucked, the story of corn. I mean, just a heartwarming piece, truly. Highly recommend. Ricewind says, the story that shaped me the most is less of written work and more the story commonly told to children, that to conform to school, social norms, parents, leads to success, and to not conform leads to failure. It's a story told as a tapestry of thousands of little threads of praise and punishment that, whether you live by it or reject it, will shape a person's actions until the point reality tears the story to pieces. I think Ricewind should write web serials.
Yes, it's very yeah. I like it. Propaganda Pagoda has given us a very long answer and also given us a shorter form of that answer that we can just read out here. It says, like our hostesses, I also read difficult books earlier in life than most. Two were Ender's Game and Dune. the short version for the podcast. These books heavily emphasize metacognition, which is thinking about the art of thinking. They use introspection for a lot of that too, and show the importance and power in knowing yourself truly, warts and all. Both works have visual adaptations, which essentially abandon this major theme, which is oof.
It's very heartbreaking to care about something that gets lost in adaptation.
Yeah, it is.
But the analysis of how it does that is on the Reddit. So if you have any grand discontents about such, that'd be the place to go. We have this reply that I think is just short enough that we can read out the whole thing by someone called Wildbow.
Wildebow, something like that.
But he's got I think it really relates to what's going on in Claw. So I feel like we should maybe give it a full read. It's hard to pin anything specific down. In the same way, it's hard to point to any piece of work as a specific inspiration for the things I've written. So when something influences me or shapes how I see the world, it's usually a part of an aggregate. I do think I've always been heavily influenced by characters I watched, though. I'd say Calvin from Calvin and Hobbes was vital to me holding onto and prioritizing imagination growing up, and taking an arm's length view of the world. I think if it hadn't been Calvin, it might have been Bart Simpson, and I would have turned out very different. Later on, as corny as it may sound, reading some romance manga like Kare Kano was key to me starting to be introspective and look at who I was, which was right at the start of my teenage years. In Kare Kano, a girl who's been lying and struggling to hold together an image as a casually perfect honor student meets a guy who struggles to be in touch with his emotions and holds onto a similarly perfect self-image to avoid any connections to the toxic and criminal, if I recall, parents who abandoned him. I'd spent years as a liar, I think because I had a well of creativity without an outlet, and I was right in the early days of my parents being divorced. I was being constantly described as being like my father in the same breath he was condemned and bad-mouthed for various reasons and was going emotionally numb. While the story is far from perfect and goes on long digressions with other characters, I found parallels in it. By the age of 16 or 17, 2 years later, I was figuring myself out. The more I dwell on it, the more I think that story was a big piece of that process.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good answer. Thanks, Bo.
I feel like there might be parallels to Mia and Carson, but I don't know. It might be irrelevant.
Yeah. Yeah. So our answers for this one. I found this question very, very difficult, honestly. I think like a lot of people here, I read a fair amount, especially as I was younger. I read shitloads. I was basically reading every day. So it's very difficult for me to look back and like pick out a book that was super influential to me. I will say I have been thinking about it basically this full hour and a half that we've been recording because I couldn't think of anything just before we started.
To be clear, the only thing in our notes for Kip's answer is stumped with an exclamation mark.
Yeah. Yeah, that's because I'm stumped. I do think Pact has actually influenced how I go about telling the truth. I think I try to be more truthful after I read Pact and later on Pale. But apart from that, yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of influences in me from the books that I've read and from the stories I've seen, but I can't point to any one of them and say, like, here is this, like, here's what it taught me, you know? I don't know.
I think what that stranger Wildbow was getting into about having a vast aggregate and then trying to pin things that are relatively lower on the tree before it starts to branch out, looking like for particular characters is like, especially because, you know, if you go down to the trunk, that's what can guide you into the branches, as it were. Like if the earlier you run back, the more formative you get before you get into patterns. And as far as guiding me through life and identity, I have an advantage compared to you, Kip, which is that my tree is quite small. I haven't been around for very long, so
You're a baby.
I would like to personally thank Fire Emblem Awakening for letting me play a mother for 300 hours and then noticing that I had done that. And then go, oh, I care so much. That was quite the realization at 12. That was probably my first wandering into fan fiction, actually, as I was like, oh, I just wish that I heard more from my son. I wish my baby boy and his older sister got along, and I want to know their stories. I wish I was there for them. I was thinking, oh, like, how would I parent them? Like, how do they end up like this? Fire Emblem has support conversations where individual characters will talk, and they're often very silly, especially in Awakening, which is like this last hurrah. So it's a lot of tropes. It's a lot of, I would even say bad writing, but like very chitsy, like tropey, and in the sense of like very like can be quite shallow. And then these sudden cavernous depths of like thematic relevance and like deep pathos. And you know, when you're small, you can't wrap your head around everything. So having those harsh contrasts did actually it was sugar for the medicine going down. Doctor Who fixating a lot on regeneration was another of those early clues. But also the emphasis on time travel, as like every action counts. Things can, like, you can change history by just by taking action and trying to affect things, and even little people can do big things. But like that's like right at the bottom of the trunk. The ones that I would think, like in just generalities, as to like sorting myself out, coming into bloom, as it were, like as the tree elaborates. I have to thank Worm, and I have to thank Practical Guide to Evil. The models there are still things that I think about on the daily and are like relevant to how I process new works. So like I'm now diversifying my portfolio, as it were, but like when like I sort of started reading Worm when I was 16 or so. And that's like comparatively recent to having only just now been getting into Austen and Beckett and such, who are affecting me now, but like very new.
Yeah. Cool. Good answer. I like it. Yeah. So this week's discussion question is,
what's an aphorism that you enjoy? So for an example of an aphorism, like it's a pithy, like truth-telling observation, something memorable, that like something that makes you feel like you're smarter, but doesn't necessarily help that much. I was looking for a good example off of Carson's. There was 100% chance, like there's 100% chance of the past happening, as a way to articulate not to regret. And the one that I ended up settling on was, resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies, which I had trouble finding a original source for, but is usually ascribed to Nelson Mandela as he left Robben Island prison. So in sort of a downgrading from the previous topic, not the expansive, like pick your medicine of the anything that have guided you, but right down to like something that like rings in your head like an earworm, an articulation that you think is very often relevant.
Yeah. Or just one that you find fun. Yeah. Okay, well, that's our episode.
Check out Wildbow's Patreon at patreon.com/wildbow. This is his carjacking trap. We're just bleeding women lying in the street.
Please give us a rating and a review on the podcatcher of your choice.
If you want to chat to us about the show or follow along with live reads, check out our channel on the Doof Media Discord. Find the invite link at doofmedia.com/discord.
And we'll see you next week.
Bye for now.
Bye.